Hello, fellow mech warriors. Mage Leader here. I should probably stop starting these unscripted videos with the phrase, I wasn't going to talk about this, but if I had $1 for every time that I said that, I could finally upgrade my fucking graphics card. But it does kind of apply here. I wasn't really planning on talking about all this, because, everybody already talks about the state of video games, right? That's, every channel does that. Everyone complains about what's currently going on with video games. The topic's done to death, but there's something about the whole situation that I've realized nobody's really looking at or talking about. And it's gotten to the point where it's kind of irritating. So I wanted to hop in and kind of throw my 2 cents into this particular issue. And the thing that really brought it into my sphere, where I decided it was worth, giving my perspective, was when it stepped into the mecha genre and space. So, a lot of you guys probably saw the... Oh, for fuck's sake, Java. I'm probably gonna leave that in. Anyway, a lot of you guys probably saw the recent beta for the game Mecha Break that's coming out soon. And it did incredibly well. It got, 400,000 players on it at some point? Crazy high numbers. Tons and tons of people were playing this game. And it's kind of the latest in a long line of fairly large games coming out of China. And China has really been kind of dominating the gaming landscape for a little while now. At least, I would say since Marvel Rivals hit shelves. Well, shelves, it's a free-to-play game on Steam, but you know what I mean. Since it released, there's been a big push to welcome China into the video game market here in the West. They've always been kind of playing around the edge of the gaming market here, but they've really broken in a big way. And, it's not surprising. Western game studios have been royally fucking up basically everything for the past, over a decade. We've had terrible games that are focused more on preaching at you instead of actually, making a good game. That's been par for the course for a very long time. And people look at these Chinese games and they're like, hey, they're not preaching at me. I want to give them my business. And while I understand that to a degree, there's really a lot more going on here than just, they're making, non-woke games. I think that in our rush to kind of, put down the woke demon that we all see and everything. So anytime a game comes out now, we look at the jawline of the female characters and we're like, oh, well, this game is clearly woke, that I'm not going to bother with it. Or this game has this scene in it. It's the developer said that they're putting, LGTV characters in the game and have to change it up for modern audiences. It's their favorite phrase, isn't it? Modern audiences. It's not a fucking thing. The modern audience is the same as the old audience. It's whatever. That's an entirely different thing. And, the Chinese games aren't doing that. So, we get so defensive on this particular issue that we're willing to take anything that doesn't have that and instantly jump in, throw ourselves in balls deep and go whole hog into whatever comes out. And it's more than just Mecha Break here. So let's go over to some of the other games that are coming out recently. It's probably on the front page. It's been a big deal. Yep, there it is. Sure enough. The duality of man. We got Marvel Rivals and Avowed side by side. Yeah. Marvel Rivals. This game comes out with, like, super appealing female character designs. They're drawing the women to be sexy again, and everyone gets, like, super excited about that. And, you know, because it has sexy women in it, that automatically means that it's good. You know, it must be encouraged. We must go out and support this thing because it's anti-woke. It's not woke. Therefore, it's good. Vote with your wallet. I think there's a lot of things people forget about here. So, Marvel Rivals was developed by NetEase, which is a Chinese company, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're the ones that actually put out Diablo Immortal. Yep, Diablo Immortal was developed by Blizzard Entertainment and NetEase. So, did you like the Do You Guys Not Have Phones game? Yeah, that's the same company. They made this as well. But NetEase is a Chinese company. And the thing to keep in mind with Chinese companies is that China doesn't have private companies. They don't. Chinese companies are owned part and parcel, and they are actively operated and run by card-carrying members of the CCP. We've seen this with Tencent. NetEase is no different. There's a bunch of other Chinese developers. They're all like this. When you have a company like this out of China, especially one that operates in foreign markets, it's going to be tightly watched and controlled and regulated by the CCP. So nothing goes out of these companies that is not pre-approved by the government. These are government run, in many cases government funded. So it's something to keep in mind that you can easily link things that these game studios are doing with what the CCP does. Because they're all part of the same team. They're all the same coordinated effort. You know, we all get pissed off about what's going on in Western gaming, where it's all about the DEI. But the thing is, the DEI is an extension of ESG, which was a massive push to essentially how it works is you bribe a company in order to adopt a certain set of values in their policy, their mission statements, and their actual practices. So the DEI initiatives that you see come from this ESG, and the single largest contributor to ESG in the West is China. And it's not even close. The person in second place, or the individuals in second place, not even remotely close. China funded ESG in the West to the tune of $4 trillion. Trillion. Okay? That is an ungodly amount of money. So it's a little bit odd that they would fund this initiative in the West so strongly and then put out products in the West that don't conform to that same set of values. It's not really surprising when you think about it. After all, nobody likes ESG and DEI in their games. Nobody likes it. So you look at that, and what is that strategy? When you're trying to break into this market over here in the West, the Western gaming industry, the market is incredibly lucrative. It makes so much money. I think it might actually be the largest single industry in the world. If not, then it's easily like in the top 10. Tons and tons of money. And, you know, you look at a country like China, whose economics are largely struggling because, you know, they're a communist country and they struggle with economics because people who are good at economics don't tend to be communist. And, you know, they want a slice of that pie. They want to start making that sweet, sweet money over here in the West. But, you know, Chinese products, if you've ever looked at a Chinese video game before, we used to make fun of Chinese games because they were always terrible. They were always bad, mediocre at absolute best, and they would be full of scummy monetization practices. They would have lifeless art assets to them. They would have all kinds of problems. They wouldn't run very well. They were shoddily made. Like, they were not good games, by and large. We'd make fun of like China in the gaming space. So China's not going to compete with Western game studios at their peak, putting out really good products back in like the early 2010s. had some really good games coming out of the West back then. So what do? Well, they start taking their money and investing it in the Western gaming industry by basically bribing Western companies into making dog shit products. Make terrible, terrible games over here in the West. And that makes it easier now for when China comes in with their own products that don't have the exact things that they paid Western studios to put in their games. And, gamers are so desperate for any kind of quality, or at the very least, any content that doesn't have that nonsense in it. The games come out and we start rushing over to China and begging them to make more games and to essentially take over the market. It's an incredibly, it's a good strategy. I mean, it's fucking working, isn't it? You see tons of people like this. I mean, you look at a lot of the big gaming and drama YouTubers, you look at people who've been covering the DEI stuff, and all they ever say when these come out is like, look, see, this is what gamers want. And it's invariably just a picture of a woman with her tits hanging out. But, this is what gamers want. All you have to do is this. And we hold up China as like this pillar of quality gaming, which it's never been. It's never been. The only reason we look at it that way now is because of how bad everything else has gotten. And it's exactly what China's intended this whole time. It's why they funded ESG in the West. Specifically to ruin markets in the West so that they can come in and advertise their own services and products over here in the West and take over Western markets, because Western markets is where all the money is. They've tried for years to compete with Western products just by being cheaper, right? Like, we've seen this for decades. You've had something in your life at some point, some product that says Made in China on it somewhere. And we laugh and joke about it because Made in China products are always lower quality. They're always shoddy. They're always based purely on being as cheap as possible in order to, have any chance of competing, because they're not capable of making things at the same quality. All they can do is make cheap copies of things that have already existed in the West. They don't innovate. They don't invent. The most you can get them to do is occasionally iterate on older Western technologies. So the only way they're going to compete over here is to sabotage the market. You create a disease, and then you sell the cure. It's not tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff. It's basic business. If you create a problem, you can then sell the solution to the problem. And that is what we're seeing here with these Chinese games. I think that we need to be very careful in how we look at these products. These are here specifically to take over the industry. And I hear a lot of people reply to this and say, well, what's, this is a good thing because it's going to force Western companies to step up, and they're going to have to drop DEI and ESG stuff in order to compete with these Chinese games, because people are going to be playing these by the hundreds of thousands. But that's not true. If you look at NetEase here, NetEase and Tencent both have huge amounts of stock invested in Western game studios. Tons and tons and tons. Majority stakeholders in a lot of Western studios. And just this past week, NetEase announced that they were pulling funding from a ton of these Western studios that they've been involved with, effectively killing them. Those companies are now dependent on Chinese money just in order to stay afloat. And so now that China's entered the market, and now that NetEase has a runaway success product in Marvel Rivals that everyone is playing, and they're making tons of money off of it, what do? They take their Western competitors that they own a ton of stock in, they take them out behind the woodshed and shoot them. So make no mistake, this is not competition that we're watching here. This is not, a case of capitalism winning out and the market will decide, vote with your wallet. They are actively shutting down their competition. The Western studios aren't going to change to suit the new gaming landscape as these Chinese games get more dominant. they're going to die out, and they're going to be replaced by China. That's been the goal all along. China will take over the market, and when they have an effective monopoly over it, you're going to see a lot of shit. There are more problems in the games industry than just DEI or the message or constantly preaching at gamers and trying to tell them they're terrible people if they don't buy your product. All that wonderful stuff that we're so sick and fucking tired of in the gaming space. It's just one of a bunch of different problems with modern gaming. And it's one that's largely manufactured, again, by China. The reason all that stuff is in your games is largely because of China. Make no mistake. You know, people say, "Oh, well, I don't. At least this game is made by people who don't actively hate me." Make no mistake, China fucking hates you. Okay? These guys want would not hesitate if America or Britain or Europe, the rest of the world, the Western world, if it disappeared tomorrow, if they could nuke it off the face of the earth and get away with it tomorrow, they wouldn't fucking hesitate to push the button. These guys hate you. This is communist China we're talking about. There is nothing that they hate more than the free world. That's what we're part of over here. Free markets. Freedom of ideas, of expression. The CCP hates that shit. And they hate you. They hate you more than a bunch of champagne socialists over in California. So if you're the type of person who doesn't like giving money to people that hate you, I would recommend against buying Chinese products and playing Chinese games. But that's just one aspect of it. There are other problems in the gaming space besides just the message. All that stuff largely comes from China, but it's not the only problem that we've had, right? You guys remember when Battlefront 2 came out, where the big joke of the time was EA and Ubisoft and Activision Blizzard, right? They were doing all this scummy, shady shit. They would manipulate their terms of service agreements that you agree to at the start of the game, so that, like, if you made a custom level or map for Warcraft 3, then it meant that Blizzard actually owned it instead of you, so they could choose to just take it and use it whenever they wanted. That sort of thing would happen. We remember the loot boxes of Battlefront 2 that made that game completely unplayable at launch. Look at all the scummy business practices that have been happening across the industry that have nothing to do with the woke mind virus. I mean, fuck, Nintendo's been engaging in a ton of it, and I don't see a whole lot of wokeness in their products outside of the Mario movie. And even that was pretty tame compared to what you see in most everything else. You remember when we all got upset because of the $70 price tag on games? We all just forget about that? All that sort of thing is still going on, and China is the source of some of the worst offenses when it comes to that kind of thing. We used to make jokes about it, right? It was self-evident. You didn't have to try to clarify it. You didn't have to talk about it. Everybody already just kind of knew intuitively. If a game came out of China, it was going to be full of scummy microtransactions. It's going to have an in-game shop with premium currency that's going to be incredibly predatory. I mean, fuck, Diablo Immortal came out. Same company that made Marvel Rivals here. Diablo Immortal came out, and it's all cash shop. There's no Diablo to it. It's just a cash shop. Essentially. Like, sure, there's some gameplay to it a little bit, but the vast majority of it is just getting currency for the shop. Because that's all the game is. It's an excuse for microtransactions. All that stuff is still in Chinese games, and if China is the only place that runs gaming, you can expect those issues to increase. So yeah, we won't be dealing with the message anymore, but there's going to be a hell of a lot of other problems in games. Things that at the very least before, when these were, private companies here in the US or in Europe, there was some chance of voting with your wallet and getting through it that way. But now, these are going to be overseas. I mean, there's a reason why all the Chinese games you're seeing come out now are live service slop. And virtually none of them have been high-quality single-player experiences. We had, Black Myth Wukong come out, which was a God of War clone that was incredibly mediocre. I never heard anybody talk about the gameplay of Black Myth Wukong. All they ever talked about was how it wasn't woke and therefore it was good, or it was making woke people upset, and therefore it was good. If you want a great example of what gaming will look like under Chinese dominance, let me show you something. Alright, this here is Delta Force. Now, for those who don't know, Delta Force was a series of games that came out in the mid to late 90s. They were a series of tactical shooters. I think some of them are still on Steam. Yeah. Delta Force. This was one of my favorite gaming series ever. I adored the Delta Force games. I've been playing them for ages. Now, they don't look like much. They haven't aged all that gracefully in a lot of ways. But this was one of the gaming franchises back in the day. But the rights to it now are owned by Team Jade. Team Jade is a Chinese company. And what have they done with it? Well, they made Delta Force. And it's a clone of Battlefield 2042. Not kidding. This was a fairly serious and grounded series of tactical shooters, and they've made it into this mindless Battlefield clone. And it's serviceable. I played it a little bit. It is exceedingly mediocre. It is a Chinese knockoff. That used to be a thing that we used for products like this. Look at this shit. This fucking shit. It is now a knockoff of another game. And that's what you get. Now, they made a big deal more recently about how they're taking the Black Hawk Down incident from Somalia in 1993. They're partially basing it off the movie. They're using the Delta Force name, because Delta Force wasn't fucking this shit. This isn't fucking Delta Force. But they use the name to market their own new shitty products. But they wanted to use the Black Hawk Down name. So Delta Force Black Hawk Down is widely considered the best game in the series. I have it on my PC. I've got the sort of remake they did for the PlayStation 2. Incredible game. And they decided that they were going to make their own version of it. A really, really bad co-op campaign multiplayer game based on Black Hawk Down, the movie. The game was based off of the book, and not the movie, had actually nothing to do with the movie. But this one, you can tell it's based on the movie because they literally play clips from the movie in the game, so very much coasting off of brand recognition. And it's awful. It's terrible. I mean, fuck. 3,500 reviews, almost all of them negative. It runs like ass, the missions aren't well designed, it doesn't look all that great, it's an insult to the original game and people who liked it. This is the future of gaming. You're going to see that they will buy up the brand names of things that you like, franchises you enjoy, and make their own versions of it. And they will be bad. They will be terrible. They will suck ass. That's the future, right here. Now, nobody cares about this one because I'm one of the few people around who actually really love the Delta Force series. And it's kind of forgotten about by modern gamers. People don't remember Delta Force like they do Rainbow Six. Okay. But, you know, Rainbow Six is owned by Ubisoft. Ubisoft is in bad shape. There have been rumblings that Tencent's going to buy them out. Tencent buys them out. Tencent has the Rainbow Six name, the Tom Clancy name. What are they going to do with that? This. You'll see this happen to it. Fucking T. People don't talk about this enough. If you just sit around, let China take over the market, take over the whole industry, that's what you have to look forward to, is more of this shit. More of this shit. I mean, the screenshot does look nice, I'll give them that. But it's Unreal Engine 5, so it runs like ass. It's unoptimized Unreal Engine 5, so it runs like hot ass. And the game is designed incredibly poorly. Basically, all the reviews say, runs like shit, plays like shit, it's not good. Oh, no, yeah. In case you had, just go back and play the old one. Well, if you look for Delta Force on Steam, Black Hawk Down Team Saber. This is the DLC for the original game. But look here. Delta Force Black Hawk Down is no longer available on the Steam store. They fucking deleted the original game. You can't play it. I mean, you can if you already owned it, but you can't go and buy the old game. Straight up, you can't. It's not allowed. And it's not just Steam. It's not on GOG either. You can't get it. Game's gone. I mean, like, the fucking DLC for it is still being sold on Steam. But you can't play it without the original game. They have all the other Delta Force games available for you to play. But if you want to play Black Hawk Down, the one that they're now trying to use the name of, you can't. It's gone. Eliminating competition. Making themselves the only option. That's what I'm talking about, guys. This is what you're going to see if you just accept all the Chinese products. We got to keep this stuff in mind when we look at video games going forward. China is not here to save the industry. They're not here to save gaming, guys. They're going to take a massive shit on it. They are not any better than what they're replacing. And we got to be really careful. Just because they're not quote-unquote woke doesn't mean that they're good. I mean, for fuck's sake, we talk about, they're not censoring, they're purposely putting sexy women in their games. I mean, this is the same country, though, that when they bring anime over from Japan, they censor the shit out of it. They censor the shit out of skimpy outfits at home. So they're not taking a stance against censorship. China's the most censorious organization on the planet. Nobody censors more than China does. Maybe North Korea. But no, these guys censor like crazy. And if they're the only ones running gaming, you can expect to see a lot of fucking censorship going forward. I mean, we already see it in the chat in Marvel Rivals. Try and say Tiananmen Square in the chat on Marvel Rivals. See how well that goes for you. They'll shut that shit down real fucking quick because it's run by the CCP. They're not going to save gaming, guys. And look, I'm going to bring this back home. We have a franchise here. Something well-loved, something that kind of died out. Didn't get the popular support anymore. Kind of petered out. Went downhill. Wound up being sold off to China. So anyway, here's an unrelated series of mech games that haven't done too great in recent years. Sold okay, but selling worse each time. You can kind of see the series as being in decline. The company that runs it, they don't have the best understanding of what made it work well to begin with. So, I'm just being hypothetical here, but maybe someday you see something like this get bought up by China. Well, then what are you going to have? Is it going to be better than what we've had here? I mean, that's just conjecture. Who knows if they're going to bother going after a mech franchise. A mech franchise that possibly competes with something that they're bringing out. Who knows? But if the other, games and studios are any indication, the CCP doesn't much care for fair competition in the market. We'll see what happens. I'm not trying to fearmonger, but it's something to be aware of. It's a tendency that they have that we should think about before we blindly jump in and just start sucking them off because they're putting out content that we happen to like. Don't go and mindlessly praise a new game that's coming out just because it's got tits in it. Alright? I love tits as much as the next guy. But for fuck's sake, there's more to gaming than skimpy outfits on women. And the more you use that as the sole metric of whether or not a game is worth supporting, the more you just kind of prove the stereotype true. Right? There's a stereotype of gamers. We're all a bunch of porn-addicted, tits-obsessed men. All we care about is whether or not the women are hot, and that's the only thing we ever think about. I always thought that was, that was an unfair characterization of gamers. We're obviously more than that. But I mean, if recent videos from other content creators are anything to go by, if the backlash against, people pointing out this exact thing is anything to go by, I mean, fuck's sake, we had a massive circular firing squad moment around people like Melanie Mac and Razorfist. I didn't watch Melanie Mac's video on the topic, to be perfectly honest. I've never much cared for her or her content. But that kind of stereotype, like, you guys don't beat the allegations when the only thing that you seem to care about when games are coming out is the tits. You gotta think about things for more than a second. You have to actually look at the broader picture here, no pun intended. What are Chinese games like? What are Chinese companies like? What have they always been like? Why are we just blindly jumping into this? We need to be more careful with what we think about when it comes to the video games that we enjoy, what we support, what we play. And that's just kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing. I've rambled for way too long, as usual. I'll have to trim a lot of this down for time just to make it somewhat watchable. I rambled about this for a good 40 minutes. So, hopefully the video you're watching now isn't that long, because I probably repeated myself a lot, but at the very least I wanted to get this off my chest. It's been really bugging me. Watching as everybody who claimed that they were against censorship in games, or that they were against scummy business practices in games, that they wanted gaming to be better, suddenly run out and support one of the worst offenders purely because they weren't supporting the message of people they dislike. They aren't even, supporting things we do like. They're just specifically not supporting people we don't. And that's all it takes, really? That's the only standard we have? We're just gonna sit back and let these guys take over the market as they've been, clandestinely planning to do and trying to do for a long time now. Just gonna let them go into their end game and play along because that's how much we hate people we disagree with. We'll sell our souls out to the fucking CCP just for a chance to own the liberals. Is that really where we're at, guys? We're smarter than this. We're smarter than this. So anyway, fuck the algorithm, because nobody's gonna fucking care about this. And I thought you made MechWarrior content, Mage Leader. I thought you made BattleTech content. Yeah, I did too. Don't know where that is. Don't know. Just kinda, talk about whatever I want. It's my fucking channel. I can make a video about whatever I want. God damn it. Today I felt like whining about video games. So here I am, whining about video games. That's all I have to say about it. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Until next time, this is Mage Leader, signing off.